In the last video, I started off describing the lore behind 4 of the 8 playable races in Final Fantasy XIV. If you haven't seen that video yet, I highly recommend watching that one first, as I give a basic overview over the similarities between all the races at the beginning. Otherwise, welcome back to the lore of Eorzea. I'm the Salt Exarch, and today we'll be continuing our discussion on the playable races. Jumping right back into things, let's start with my personal favorite race in the game, the Miqo'te. The Miqo'te are a humanoid race, distinguished from the other races by their long, feline ears and tails. Their ancestors led a hunting lifestyle, leading them to develop a keen sense of smell and powerful legs. Their tails are also said to provide them with exceptional balance. The Miqo'te possibly originated in southern Meracydia, though it's not known for sure if they did or not. At some point in the ancient past, they made their way to Eorzea. However, during the reign of the ancient Allagans, most of them were driven out of the region into the far reaches of Xaela, though some were used by the Allagans as imperial conscripts. It wouldn't be until after the Age of Endless Frost, during the 5th Umbral Era, that they would return to the continent, searching for wildlife to hunt. The Miqo'te are divided into 2 separate clans, much like the other races: the Seekers of the Sun and the Keepers of the Moon. The Seekers of the Sun are spread across the realm, some taking up lives as sailors and pirates in Lenosha, some living in the fringes and jagged peaks of Garibania, and others eking out a life in the Sigoli Desert and Thanlan. The Keepers of the Moon, on the other hand, generally live in the Black Shroud, and gained a reputation as poachers among the Gridanians. Due to the delicate power balance between the inhabitants of the Tollswood and the Elementals, the Keepers of the Moon were often seen as antagonistic due to their disregard for Gridanian hunting laws. Though lately they have made peace with Gridania, and many have agreed to follow the guidelines. Despite this, they are still often persecuted by the Gridanians. The Seekers and the Keepers have even more differences in both lifestyle and abilities. The Seekers of the Sun, as their name suggests, are diurnal, and are described as being exceptionally strong, agile, and having the stamina to run for hours under the hot sun. Because of this, they are specifically well suited to hunting in hot, arid climates. They are also adept at diving and climbing, which makes them exceptional sailors. Seekers of the Sun are highly patriarchal in nature, with each tribe centered around a breeding male, called a nun, and a harem of females. Young males are referred to as Tia, and must either challenge and assume the position of nun, or leave to form their own harem. In particularly large communities, there may be more than one nun, though apparently this is rare. There are also some other complicated nun-Tia relationships, like sometimes Tias can leave to claim territory for their current tribe, instead of splitting off from their tribe, thus becoming a nun of their own territory, but still having ties to the original tribe. And also, leaving a tribe to form their own tribe is often looked down upon, and brands the Tia who does so an outcast, which usually means the new tribe dies out due to a lack of female followers. It's really complicated. On the other hand, Keepers of the Moon are nocturnal, and can be distinguished from the Seekers of the Sun by their round eyes as opposed to the Seekers' slit-like pupils, and typically darker fur. They also have larger ears, skinnier tails, and more pronounced canines. Instead of the insane physical stamina of the Seekers of the Sun Miqo'te, the Keepers of the Moon have incredible willpower and sharp instincts. Unlike all the convoluted tribes and harems of the Seekers of the Sun, the Keepers of the Moon are a matriarchal, family-based society, revolving around a strong mother figure and her children. They typically form smaller groups of 2 or 3 families, and males in their society are often loners and wanderers. The Keepers of the Moon enjoy hunting, and many families still participate in applying war paint to their faces before going out on night hunts, which is a message that they are prepared to shed blood and fight as warriors for their gods in the afterlife should they die. Now, the section on Miqo'te wasn't so long just because they're my favorite. Their clan dynamics and society are just really complex and kind of hard to explain succinctly. But, moving along, the next race on our list is the loud, proud, boisterous Roegadyn. The Roegadyns are one of the largest races in the game, towering above many of the others with their big, muscular bodies. Their appearance is mostly humanoid, but noticeably they have flattened noses and fiercer faces than the Here. They're seen as an almost barbaric race, with a fierce competitive streak, and are known for their honor and loyalty. Many famous warriors in the past were Roegadyns, and they're said to be courageous and filled with endless stamina. The Roegadyns are descended from maritime people from the northern seas, some of whom sailed south and reached Eorzea. Unlike the other races, where we got eras that the races arrived in Eorzea, all the sources on the Roegadyns merely mention that they arrived in Eorzea at some point. The first group of Roegadyns crossed over from Erzlant, which there's still no way I'm pronouncing right, and settled in Alabathia's Spine, where they became the Hellsgaurd. The only time period mentioned in the lore at all is that, in the 6th Astral Era, a group of sea wolf Roegadyns traveled to Eorzea to escape a tyrant on a single sea vessel, and the crew landed on the island of Vilbrant and became key founders in what would become Limzilla Minza. It's not mentioned if this was the first time the sea wolf Roegadyns reached Eorzea, or if the group that became the Hellsgaurd weren't also sea wolves before becoming the Hellsgaurd over time, so which clan reached Eorzea first, and how long the Roegadyns have been present in the region, is anyone's guess. As mentioned before, the Roegadyns are split into 2 clans, the Sea Wolves and the Hellsgaurd. The Sea Wolf Roegadyns generally lead lives on the sea, and live near or in port towns. They have a very pirate-like culture, and many straight up become pirates or privateers for Limzilla Minza. Their culture pretty much revolves around the sea, with seafood, cured meats, and ales and wines being their favorites, as these were the dishes that were easier to obtain or keep on long sea voyages. The majority of the Roegadyn population in Eorzea is sea wolves. The Hellsgaurd live in the mountainous region of Alabathia's Spine. Their clan stands watch over the mountains of flame that they believe to be the gates of hell themselves, hence their clan name. Traditionally, many of them take up the mercenary trade, and as such are a common sight in Ul'dah, where merchants often hire sellswords to protect them from bandits along their trade routes. Because they live near actual active volcanoes, their bodies and minds are tempered by their extreme environment, and they're considered very resilient. Generally speaking, they tend to have reddish-hued skin in comparison to the cooler-colored skin of the sea wolves, and their culture revolves around their harsh environment. They lead very pragmatic lifestyles, where they let nothing go to waste and focus on function over form. Due to the limited food provided by their environment, it's customary for all but the firstborn of a family to be sent away from the villages. They're also very magically inclined, with aspiring Hellsgaurd mages performing firewalking to bring out their latent mystical talents. Also notably, the art of channeling one's inner beast, and therefore the entire art of the warrior, hails from one of the Hellsgaurd villages. There's one more notable type of Roegadyn in Final Fantasy XIV, and that is the Othardian Roegadyns. These aren't a playable clan, but they're basically a variety of Roegadyn that differs from the other two by having more humanoid noses and skin tone. Gosetsu is a notable example of this kind of Roegadyn. It's easy to mistake him as just a human that the developers used the Roegadyn base for to make him look gigantic, but no, he's actually a separate kind of Roegadyn altogether. And finally, we've come to the last full race of Final Fantasy XIV, and the first race to be added after A Realm Reborn, the Aura. The Aura are humanoids with curved horns and scale patterns running across their bodies. They seem draconian in nature, but scholars in the game's lore dispute this, since there's a number of differences between the two that make this unlikely. First of all, an Aura's horns are actually their hearing organs, giving them a keen sense of hearing and spatial recognition. Dragon's horns, on the other hand, are completely bony and do not possess sensory properties. In addition, there's an extreme sexual dimorphism seen among Aura, which is not seen among dragons, making it unlikely the two are related. The Aura originated in the Far East, specifically on the Azim Steppe. Aura creation myth states that the Dawnfather Azim and the Duskmother Nama created the two clans to serve as their soldiers, in a proxy war to decide who gets to rule the world. However, the two clans soon learned to live in harmony, and Azim and Nama decided to do the same, returning to the heavens and leaving the world in the care of their children. These two clans, the Ryan of Azim and the Xaela of Nama, are very different from one another. The Ryan clan possess white horns and scales, and, believing themselves to be the children of Azim, they spread across Authard. Originally they were met with hostility, but a Yanzian warlord saw their potential and forged an alliance with them, taking them in as warriors, retainers, and soldiers. They spread across the Far East like this, serving under warlords as powerful assets, and became renowned for their martial prowess. The Xaela, on the other hand, remained on the Azim Steppe, living nomadic lifestyles, hunting and gathering in small tribes. They retained their warlord spirits from when their ancestors fought, fighting over land and resources on the sparse land of the steppe. Conflict is common between these clans, with new clans forming, fighting, and either being killed off or dissolving fairly frequently. Some clans did try to spread out beyond the steppe, though those who made it to Authard's frontier soon found themselves under the Garlean Empire's subjugation. We know of at least one clan of Xaela that made it to Eorzea in the 6th Astral Era, and they found the lands of Coerthas similar enough to their old home that they tried to return to their nomadic lifestyle there. Remember, this was before the 7th Umbral Calamity, which plunged Coerthas into an endless winter. Before this point, Coerthas was a mountainous region with some plains and plenty of vegetation. However, the Ishgardians, viewing the tribe as the descendants of heretics who slept with dragons, slaughtered most of them. There's a bunch of other cultural stuff I can say about the Xaela, but I feel like it's better if I save that for a separate video about the Azim Steppe and its culture and tribes. So that brings us to the end of the Aura. Our last race is the Viera, another of the 2 new races introduced in Shadowbringers. Much like the Hrothgar at the end of the last video, the Viera's lore isn't nearly as fleshed out as some of the other races, but we'll go over what we can. The Viera are a race of humanoids with long, bunny-like ears, who often lead hunter-gatherer lifestyles in forests. They are also known for their longevity, with most Viera living upwards of 240 years. Like the Aura, the Viera have their origins in Authard, in this case, forests in the south of Authard. Until recently, they have been relatively cut off from the world, and only now have some of them started branching to areas outside southern Authard. In fact, of the 2 clans, the Rava, who originate in a place called the Gulmore Jungle, have a code called the Green Word, that specifically forbids outside contact. Those who choose to leave the forest are banished from their home and are never allowed to return. In contrast, the Veena tribe, located in forests in the Miqo'te range, is more open to exploring the outside world. Much like Hrothgar females, Viera males are rare, with only 1/5 of the Viera population being born male. Viera males lead reclusive lives, and are taken away from the village and taught by another male to become a wood warder, or a protector of the forest. Once again, whether or not we'll ever see a male Viera, let alone play as one, is up to the developers. And there we go, all 8 playable races broken down and analyzed from a lore standpoint. There was one thing that I'm sure some of you noticed that I left out, and that's the various naming conventions the different races have. Ordinarily, I wouldn't even bat an eye at naming conventions. But in this case, the detail and depth the lore goes into the naming conventions behind each race is pretty impressive. I was actually going to go over each of the naming conventions as part of each race's analysis, but the script for these videos were getting long enough as it was without that, and I didn't want to split this up into more than 2 videos. So naming conventions are likely a video for another day. Also, I didn't mention it when we were going over the general overview of all the races earlier, but because I know you're all just dying to know, let's talk about the logistics of interbreeding. All races are sexually compatible, as implied by many suggestive dialogues in the game, but actual mixed-race relationships and mixed-race breeding is considered taboo, at least in some places and cultures. One couple mentions they had to run away from home because they were in a mixed-race relationship where one was a Hyr and the other was a Miqo'te. And actual mixed-race breeding is frowned upon, as seen by how Hilda Ware, the illegitimate child of an Ellison highborn and his Hyr maid, was treated as an abomination. When it comes to actual reproduction, the successful conception of a mixed-race child is low, and in the rare case it is successful, it's usually the mother's race that determines most of the racial features of the child. For instance, if an Aura female mated with a Miqo'te male, in the event that they were successful in bearing a child, it might be an Aura with fewer scales or sharper teeth, but it wouldn't look like a proper mix between the 2. You can also see this in Hilda, who, having a Hyr mother, has most of the physical characteristics of a Midlander, but with slightly pointed ears. This lack of success with interbreeding and a lack of true hybrids is why we don't really see a bunch of fanfiction-esque half-dragon catgirls or long-eared buff Ellison Roegadyn NPCs running around and getting into trouble. And I believe that finally wraps us up for the playable races. Before I end the video, I did want to apologize for how late this video was. I'm not going to go into too much detail about what happened, but essentially I've just been busy dealing with the end of my college semester, adjusting to a new job with early morning and overnight hours, and balancing out all of that with my social life and, obviously, the holidays. Things have been pretty hectic, and I don't see that changing anytime soon, so my upload schedule of 1 episode every 2 weeks is really not feasible anymore. I'm going to at least try to put out 1 episode every month, but my uploads will really depend on how busy I am and how much time I have. I am going to try to get out a new episode sometime before the new year, to make up for how late this video is, but aside from that, I can't really guarantee any consistent upload schedule right now. In the meantime though, I am going to try to get better at editing. I do realize my editing skills aren't anywhere near a professional level, and in my free time, if I'm not working on a video, I'll at least try to hone my editing skills and streamline my process. Once again, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any suggestions or comments, be sure to leave them down in the comment section below, and if you like the video and want more lore breakdowns, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.